So that was 2 generations born in that very house, and that's now where my littlest sister lives with her 4 little girls. Another sister, Teresa, raises more than 70 varieties of fruit and dozens of herbs near Walnut Creek in the small town of Eureka. And Henry grows more than 650 varieties of vegetables on 10 acres bordered by Kinder Creek and Walnut Creek, just a few miles from Teresa. The pull of these people and this land eventually became too intense to ignore, and so after decades living in major metropolitan areas around the world, I returned to Congerville, Illinois, population 350. How many people have ever heard of Congerville? Oh, a few, excellent. That's where this book is centered. It's a place that now centers me. It's my brother Henry's farm. His farm is nestled in the nation's heartland, midway between the towns of Bloomington and Peoria, and midway between the cities of Chicago and St. Louis. It's located in the Mackinac River Valley, a mecca of diverse, organic, and sustainable farming hidden in the rolling hills of a small river valley in the middle of a flat, chemical industrial corn belt that stretches for hundreds and hundreds of miles. By contrast, Henry's bottomland fields are nestled in a sheltered bowl surrounded by oak and hickory forests, and his upper fields look out over a panorama of forested bluffs and fertile valleys crisscrossed by waterways. So that's kind of where I'm coming from. I kind of, left home. I went to the West Coast. I went to Japan. I went to New York City, big, bright lights, big city, and I traveled a lot. When I lived in New York, I sort of never left New York unless I was flying to some strange place like the Baltics or Eritrea or where else did I go those years? Turkey. But eventually I did. I came back home, and the interesting thing is I find that I'm busier now than I ever was in New York City, which is kind of interesting. So just as a word of warning, don't start a nonprofit foundation. It'll take over your life. I want to read just another very short excerpt before I go into the slides. And this, I don't know, this needs no introduction probably. I was asking somebody, what should I read to this group? What should I read to this group? And they said, they're college students? And I said, yeah, some. And they said, well, read about sex. This is about duck sex. Actually, if you really want the full story of duck sex, you're going to have to read it yourself, because I'm only going to do the very introduction here, and I'm not going to get into the nitty-gritty. But it's very interesting. It's actually fascinating. Like my great-grandparents and my grandparents before me, I entered into a very minor way the waterfowl business. Shortly after I moved to Congerville, I acquired 6 snow-white pekins, 2 drakes and 4 ducks, 3 heavy-bodied appleyards, a rare breed from England, good for both meat and eggs. They look something like mallards on steroids. All 3 females, and 2 elegant, dusty, gray-blue Swedish blues, 1 duck and 1 drake. Actually, I have some pictures. Where did my thing go? Okay. Actually, the white ones are the pekins, and those big, heavy-looking, mallardy-looking things are the appleyards. My drakes were rather idle and decorative. Here's a question. How do you tell a drake from a duck? Oh, come on, biology people. You can actually tell one of these guys right here is a drake. It's the far left guy, and it's the curled feathers on his tail. My drakes were rather idle and decorative, while my 7 girls soon proved themselves to be marvelous layers, providing me with 1 amazingly rich egg apiece each day like clockwork. There's nothing quite so satisfying as a fresh duck egg. I assume that the author Laurie Colwyn was writing about chicken eggs, but her wise words in More Home Cooking are even more applicable to duck eggs. She writes, in my opinion, the perfect form of egg is sunny side up, very gently cooked and covered with a pink, filmy veil. These eggs should be served with very lightly buttered toast. Both eggs and toast get the merest sprinkle of salt and nothing else. You do not eat these for breakfast, you eat them for dinner when you are fully awake. The problem with the peaceable kingdom of my little barnyard was not the ducks and the eggs. It was the particularly rabid form of sexual maturity that the drakes were entering. For weeks I chalked their behavior up to boys will be boys, and then went on with my life. As we edged into late April, a premature heat wave caused my house to open up like a hothouse flower. It soon came to resemble the Midwestern version of a traditional Japanese farmhouse in summer, with all the windows, doors, and sliding doors ajar. Soon I could no longer bear the fever-pitched barnyard activities. The open doors and windows of my house let in breezes and bird song, along with the first house flies. The breezes and bird song I welcomed, the bugs I could live with, but the predominant and continual sounds of rampant duck sex wafting into my summer house were getting on my nerves. As Lord Chesterfield famously said of human sex, the pleasure is momentary and the position ridiculous. This is true in spades for duck sex, which may be the most ungainly and ridiculous in the entire animal kingdom. And I'm not going to go any further. But the whole point is that part of what this book is trying to do is bring people into contact with their food, even if they've never raised any food before, and the fact that the kind of egg that you can get from ducks that are raised in your backyard, or chickens raised in your backyard, which is, I guess, a big thing happening right now, backyard chickens. There's even a backyard chicken magazine I saw, is just an amazing difference from the run-of-the-mill food that you're going to get in most places in this country. So in my talk today, I'm basically going to go through two different food systems very quickly. The industrial model that most of us are eating whether we want to or not because it's the predominant one, and then talking about an alternative, more sustainable and local food system and giving you a few examples of that. As I was sort of preparing for this, I was also trying to prepare for my taxes. I hope you guys are too. And I was thinking that we all have to pay taxes. And whenever I write that check, I can't help but think of all the different uses that money is going to be put to. And whatever your politics are, whatever the activities your tax money supports, I'm sure there's some that you're grateful for. I'm very grateful for my money that goes to libraries and roads. And then I'm sure there's other things that you're not particularly happy that your money goes to. But you can't do anything about it, no matter how annoying or infuriating it is to write a check for those activities. You simply can't withdraw your support. You can't say, no, I'm not writing this check, or you might go to jail. But food is different. Food, you can actually simply stop participating in something if you don't think it's right. If you know that a certain kind of food that you might buy is not in accordance with your values, if it's maybe not good for humane animal treatment, maybe it's not good for our rivers, maybe it's not good for our soil, maybe it's the fossil fuels that pollute the air, whatever it is, you can actually be more conscious in your food choices and decide what you're going to eat. You don't have to eat a chicken that comes from a confined animal feeding operation, or you don't even have to eat chicken at all if you don't want to. You don't have to be party to flying asparagus across the world. You don't have to buy asparagus in December. And if you don't like strip malls or big box stores or exploitation of workers, you don't have to buy 49-cent strawberries. And so you can just be subversive in your own quiet way, and you can actually vote with your fork, which is what we're going to talk about tonight. It's not really a new idea. I'm sure people in the past, you remember things I remember when I was in New York City, it was a big deal about not supporting sweatshops, not buying your Nike shoes or whatever it was at that time. There were sweatshops in Asia where those were being made, so people stopped buying them to send a message. And I think we can all do the same thing with our pocketbooks and change the world for the better. So I'm going to do basically a tale of two food systems really quickly here. And those pictures kind of represent the two systems I'm going to talk about. And I'm going to give two examples. One example is going to be plants, corn basically, and the other example is going to be animals. I'm going to look at chickens just briefly. One of the systems is very detrimental to soil, air, and water, and most likely to our health as well, and to the animal's health. And the other one is actually very beneficial. It actually is a positive. It actually builds soil and can actually clean our air and water, and it's just and humane. And I'm going to show some of those things here. Starting with our chemical industrial complex, which is basically what's happened over the past 50 years. And I kind of go through that in my book with my grandparents' farm.